Hello. It looks like we got a couple people joining us. Just invited Bart Peters, who's worked with Marriott for a few years.
Who's with Tim Peter and Associates.
And Tim Peter, who's with HSMAI. Looks like they're both joining in. For those of you who follow Lauren Gray on Blab and are part of the, or follow, I am Lauren's colleagues. He had another conflict today, but still wanted to keep Blab running. So first off, can everyone hear me? If you can either send a message, comment, or Tim or Bart, if you guys want to chime in.
Well,
We're all good? Sweet. Well, to kick things off, there was a very big announcement this week in the hospitality industry.
a little bit
of an understatement.
Marriott and Starwood. Yeah, they are merging and are now basically the new superpower in the hospitality industry. Bart and Tim, what are kind of just your first impressions of hearing this announcement?
Tim, do you want to go first, or?
No, go ahead, please.
It's big. I was starting to kind of look a little bit more, adding more brands to the Marriott channel. I believe they already had 12 to 15 already, and then adding all the ones that are on the Starwood side. Saw that Sheraton was a big play in China. That's possibly one of the reasons why Marriott bought the brand, because there's going to be more and more once the Chinese economy starts on the upswing, they'll be kind of coming back more and more to the States. So having them being able to have that brand recognition, and then just really combining all their rewards program, it's going to be pretty interesting how they have to integrate everything as hotels, and how are they going to manage all the brands, and kind of how the competition between their own brands within cities is really going to be interesting to see how that all gets integrated.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see what their franchisees think over time. I mean, obviously there's going to be some area protection, issues or conflicts there when you look at properties that might be Sheraton's versus properties that might be Marriott's in the same market and things like that. I think it's hugely beneficial to them in terms of their negotiating power with the OTAs. I think that's a huge plus. It's great for guests in a lot of ways. I mean, it remains to be seen how the SPG customers are going to feel about it and folks like that. But I think it's incredibly powerful, the amount of distribution they now have with 1.1 million rooms, right? Nothing drives conversion more when your guests come and look for a place to stay than being able to say yes, right? Than being able to say, yeah, we've got a property where you're trying to go. And now more than anybody else in the industry, they're able to do that. So that's a huge win.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything. Just the volume of options that fans of either brand have now. Some of the initial feedback or backlash or just questions I have seen are all around the rewards programs, especially people who have either the Marriott or Starwood credit card rewards. I don't think anything official has been said, but from what I've seen both, it seems to go back and forth between who had a better rewards program, Starwood or Marriott. They're constantly on the top of best reward programs lists. So I feel like it's going to be a great thing for either party. That I think the company's going to take the best of the both, and when you're already at the cream of the crop, it's just going to create, I think, the most exclusive premier or rewards program we've seen in the hospitality industry.
Definitely open up the options for those rewards, where more options is always better. So how they integrate, again, that's something with American and United. How they kind of have to integrate, that's always going to be kind of a sticking point for the user experience or the customer's experience. But that's something that this isn't going to happen in a year or a couple of months. They're going to take time, and I'm sure they're going to spend the time and quality to really make sure that this all gets taken care of. That they're again, with so many different options coming online with Airbnb. Again, they need to all continue to make it about the experience and how they can really now they have an even larger breadth of customers that they can reach out to.
Yeah. So what do you guys see changing due to the merger. Do you see any brands owned by Marriott or Starwood that would be on the chopping block?
I wouldn't even guess what they're going to be doing with that yet. There could be some, with big brands, there always could be some mergers, and they have different from select service to full service to luxury. How they kind of integrate. They've also each, I think, recently created some new brands. How they kind of go about that, how they're really going to, again, with their branding. I know Sheraton's been trying to rebrand their hotels, and how they're going to kind of fit this all on together, and how they're going to maybe go after their each niche market. It's going to be really interesting to see. There's going to be a lot of, I feel, chances for them to kind of really revive their brands that they currently have for both of them, and kind of really call out to specific segments that they're going after.
Yeah, the one that I do see, and I don't make a lot of predictions about that kind of stuff. I think Bart is absolutely right that they're going to take their time and sort this out in a lot of ways. The one place where I would be very surprised if both brands survive, though, is Edition and Tribute. Right, they're soft brands that they've made available for independent hotels. They're both very, very young in terms of how long they've been around. They don't have a lot of mind share. They don't have a lot of market penetration, and they don't have a lot of differentiation in terms of what makes one really stand out in the marketplace. So I would expect that one of those probably goes away. If I'm going to make any, if I'm going to make any bold predictions about this, that's my bold prediction.
I've heard it here first, folks.
I've reserved the right to be wrong.
That's the whole thing. Once you have that many room nights and that many 30-plus brands, it's really, you have to delineate. And we were just at a digital conference, and as far as online presence, and it's kind of same with offline, it's really going to be what's going to be the user experience. I know they're not, again, one reason why they're probably not going to move too fast is they really don't want to alienate any of their current customers with kind of more of the shared economy coming online. But again, with those economies of scale, you can really kind of offer a lot of different things. You can really start segmenting with the email accounts. They'll kind of have the joint force. And I know DeAndre was kind of talking about how a lot of people on social media are talking about this. And Bethany, you were talking about how your sister was even talking about it because she travels a lot. A lot of those people who do travel for business, the rewards program really does affect them. And, this next week with Thanksgiving in the United States, that's going to be could be a topic of conversation that's coming up throughout. So it is definitely something that's going to affect a lot of people. I know there are a lot of people that I went to school with that are consultants, and they really love their loyalty brand, so they can get, they travel for work. Once they get known at the hotels, they love that, but then they also love being able to take their spouses or going on their own vacations to different brands, so they can really use their loyalty points that they've earned. And it's really going to be interesting how both Starwood and Marriott can really go after each of them and really kind of make them feel wanted and loved, so they can kind of really maintain or even increase the user experience.
Yeah, undoubtedly. By the way, I do need, since I made a bold prediction, I do need to correct myself. I said edition. Clearly, I meant autograph collection. just so that nobody later says, hey, you said edition's going away. No, autograph. But yeah, what Bart just said is exactly right. SPG is huge and clearly drives a very loyal customer base, as does Marriott Rewards. But I can't imagine a world where SPG gets seriously devalued without causing some real damage to the whole reason they merged in the first place. So they're going to have to tread very carefully, very lightly there.
Indeed.
Yeah. DeAndre did ask if the Starwood name was as recognizable to consumers as Marriott is to consumers. He knows some of the sub-brands like Westin or Sheraton, but not really right. Starwood.
I used to work, years ago, I worked for Cendant. And nobody knew the Cendant name, but they certainly knew Howard Johnson, they certainly knew Days Inn, they certainly knew Ramada, they certainly knew Travelodge. Admittedly, we're talking a different chain scale, but the same reality is true, where the fact that Starwood as a name is not well known I don't see that as a big issue. Starwood's brands are very well known: Sheraton, Westin, Sheraton, Westin W, etc. So yeah, I think that's
And that's going to be the whole thing. I think it's going to be less about the whole corporation brand, because I mean everyone knows Marriott and JW Marriott as Marriott brands, but once you're not seeing as much of the Courtyard by Marriott's in the name, or Spring Hill Suites by Marriott. It's more known as a Courtyard or Spring Hill Suites. And when again, like I was talking about with the Sheraton Westin W, it's really about, I think, being able to say, hey, we don't have available at this hotel. And again, it also gives you an option for you can really have different kind of price points with so many of those brands together and so many in the cities. Kind of really, if we don't have room nights available, this is a comparable one in Starwood for a Marriott, or it kind of really gives them that option to keep that open. And again, I was reading in, I think, Bloomberg, where they're talking about how Sheraton's done a really good job of building their brand in China. And again, that's a huge market with 1 billion plus people. Again, and I think Marriott, they don't have as many locations within that, or as big a brand authority for overseas coming here. Marriott's also brought some other brands from Europe, such as AC Hotel. We were talking about Delta Hotels, kind of more European. It's really when you can have those sites, and then people are searching from there from other people that don't necessarily know the U.S. market, and just being able to have a lot more of those options somehow integrated on their websites, it really build up cohesiveness of how they can really try and have a bigger play for market share when they're competing with Hilton and all their brands as well.
I want to touch on something, Bart, you said before too, that really is a huge advantage to Marriott here, or Marriott Wood, or whatever we want to call them right now that they're coming together, is you mentioned Airbnb before.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we've heard for the last bunch of years, and we're starting to see a lot, is how guests really want a personalized, a customized experience. One of the reasons why Airbnb has become so popular is you can find this thing that's very specific to what your needs and what you want for that specific trip. With 30 brands, Marriott is going to be in a great position to say, just as you said a moment ago, that, okay, Hotel A, insert favorite brand here, is not available this weekend or for this specific trip, but here's all these other options that work so well and are entirely appropriate to a given guest's trip at a given time. That's huge in terms of how they can segment customers and direct them to the right property for the right trip at the right time. So they're not really customizing the stay at any given hotel. They're customizing the offering to the needs of the guest for a given trip in a way that nobody else can touch right now once they integrate the two brands.
And again, it's something like with Marriott has the Ritz, the JW, and then kind of the W. Those are kind of the upper end ones. And when you can kind of really segment those to, maybe W's more kind of geared towards the millennials, JW, Ritz, can be geared more towards the boomers. You can really kind of start segmenting your audiences and really kind of creating those environments where, again, that's something that's kind of very unique about Airbnb is, you can have a room, you can have the whole apartment, and there's so many different locations that they have. The Marriott's now also gaining so many more locations within cities or within neighborhoods that it's really going to kind of give them the options to really say, okay, you're going to AAC, there's not a JW Marriott or kind of their upper end there, but they have the W Hotel. So that gets you in Dallas, gets you closer to the Stars and Maverick events or concerts. But again, you can still use your loyalty card. Whereas if you're on the road, you stay in Omaha, you're staying at the Cornhusker. So it's just really a different way. You can really have, really tailor how people are staying within cities based upon location and kind of having similar brands near those locations.
I also want to build on that, because when you add in Autograph and Tribute, whichever one of those two survives, going back to my prediction for a second, that just adds another thing of, if you don't want the typical stay, you want something a little more boutique, you want something a little more unique, a little more distinct, those are additional options that they can bring to the table, which again aren't appropriate for every guest or aren't appropriate for every stay, but when they are, when they can tailor that offering to that guest, that's just a huge win.
As far as like working on Marriott, I know one kind of concern is if they're going to try and push this all to one URL, that's going to make it very kind of congested on that URL. And then it's also with Google, I've seen a lot of domain crowding. So it's going to be interesting. Do they kind of keep more of the brands kind of on their separate URLs and kind of have one kind of, almost their own internal Expedia type site or Roomkey site that they're a part of, where they kind of can push you to the other areas within the market. Again, domain crowding is more so like where Google really likes to have a variety in their search engine results. And they only really want to show a couple of pages from one URL. So if you're trying to combine the Starwood hotels with Marriott into one big super page, that could kind of cause some issues there. But it's, again, like Tim was talking about buying power, Google's also pushing more and more of their HPAs in their local 3-packs. So that's going to give them a little bit more, I think, power to kind of really have, they can really try and dominate that 3-pack. And having the combined power of Starwood and Marriott going after those meta searches and kind of could help kind of push down some of those OTAs that really do try and get some of those fees from the big brands.
It's a great point, Bart. I hadn't considered that at all, and I think that's really brilliant about this idea of you could do a search for Dallas, you could do a search for New York, and it's entirely possible that every single result could be a Marriott property of some kind, right? That's hugely powerful. And
again, it's so much so like where HBAs, I see a lot, not so much with how many, or like the local 3-pack, it's not necessarily so much the reviews, it's really, and one thing I've kind of seen is Google, kind of pre-plans those local 3-packs with hotels. If your hotel doesn't have availability, they'll try and show someone that is of similar value that does. And again, when you're not showing up, this gives you more opportunity to really dominate that local 3-pack. Kind of what you're talking about with Sheraton, W, because they also like to show different star ratings, different kind of review ratings within that 3-pack. So you could really, have a lot of coverage and share a voice in that 3-pack that, they don't necessarily have as two separate brands.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Assuming they approach it with that strategy, it could either be a huge pro for them in taking over domain crowding, or they could create their own problem if they do, depending on what they do when they rebrand.
And again, like kind of one thing that I kind of had some discussions about are kind of doorway pages, and they need to be very careful of not creating the websites that they currently have and turn them into doorways, which is basically, having similar information or description of their hotels that's really trying to redirect them to, like a Marriott.com or MarriottRewards.com. So again, they need to be very careful with that, where if they do have separate URLs for, Renaissance, Westin, W, and they have some of the same content, they do need to kind of make sure that the reason why they're doing that is really for user experience and not to game the Google search rankings. It's really, again, I think, with machine learning, Google's kind of getting a little bit better and turning away from, just the pure algorithms of just saying, let's have these sites. If they start learning that, hey, this brand is part of that Marriott Starwood Rewards company, they need to really kind of focus on how each website or each new site that they do have has really a focused reason for the user.
Yeah.
Definitely. I posted this in the comments, but we do have an open seat if anybody wants to join, share your thoughts. Both Tim and Bart and even myself have been involved in hospitality marketing. I think some of our followers, though, might just be fans of hospitality. You stay in hotels frequently. If you want to jump in and share your opinion, or maybe what you're worried about that could change if you're a big fan of either Starwood or Marriott. We've been talking about all the pros. What does everyone kind of see as a worst case scenario? What should Marriott and Starwood be cautious about so they don't lose fans or followers?
Well, I mean, they're one of their biggest problems is they've got to fill 1.1 million rooms, right? I mean, even at a 60% occupancy, they have to fill almost as many rooms as the next largest chains have. And if they fail to do that, that's going to hurt them with franchisees. That's going to hurt them in terms of retention. There could be brand consistency issues that create some issues for guests as they go from place to place. You know, if a JW Marriott person, you know, stays with something that's a little more down market because it's the right thing for that trip, that could theoretically hurt them. That's probably less of an issue because most guests do tend to know what they're getting when they go from brand to brand. And again, I used to sell Wyndham on the one side and Super 8 on the other. And usually our guests knew, okay, I'm not going to get that Wyndham experience when I stay in a Super 8. But I do think the bigger problem is they could screw up the loyalty program somehow, right? Devalue SPG or devalue Marriott Rewards in some meaningful way to a guest, or hurt themselves with some level of their franchisee base that causes some retention issues or some quality issues. And that's really the biggest, the real big con. It's a big company. And,
yeah,
you know, people say sometimes with large companies, it's like turning the Titanic. What most people forget is that the Titanic actually failed to turn.
Yeah.
So you got to watch that really closely.
Yeah, I was talking to Lauren about some different information saying, like, where you have the Airbnb, it's kind of the motorboat. They can kind of turn quickly if they're having issues with any of the apartments. They can knock them down. You know, really focus on it. When you do have 1 million plus rooms, it does take a little bit longer. And again, talking about branding with those 30 plus brands, you may be seeing some of the hotels that are currently under one of the Marriott brands, but you know they have multiple in the city. They might not have one of the Starwood brands at the kind of current level that the Marriott is. They might be wanting to do some rebranding for those hotels. And I know, kind of going from some experience where we had one Marriott kind of rebranding from a Renaissance to a Marriott. There's a lot involved with that, whether it's when you do rebrand, you have to kind of worry about all your citations online because you have the old name with the current address, current phone number. But then again, it's also when you do rebrand, TripAdvisors, you know, even sometimes Yelps, it takes a little bit longer for them to kind of switch on hotels, or, you know, they like to deal with TripAdvisor. If you kind of have to push down any of the old reviews that might be, you know, poor reviews, you have to kind of really show that you have put money into that hotel. There is a big reason for why they should kind of get rid of those hotels associated to that address. Then again, with all the booking engines, that's going to be kind of interesting. And I know why it's going to take them a while to kind of really merge the Starwood and Marriott is getting new hotels and booking engines, particularly when they're in the OTAs, takes a while for them to kind of turn one off and turn one on. So that's going to be pretty big. So you'll probably be having to see phases. And again, with seasonality, you don't want to have that turned off when you have a lot of travelers coming to them.
Yeah. I think that getting the technology right is going to be an interesting challenge, right? Marriott has a custom central reservation system. Starwood has a custom reservation system, right? They're both on custom platforms. Moving all those reservations and all that customer data from one universe to another universe or to some new common universe, that's hairy.
Yeah,
there's no easy way to say that. Like, that's just work.
Yeah.
And there's 8 million different ways that could go wrong. They'll probably get it right. They do tend to do a good job, but
and it's something like where they could try and do with some of those smaller brands, like the Autograph editions, you know, really trying to get those together, kind of focus on the ones where they have less room nights. When they have so many brands, you can kind of do that, learn from those, and then kind of you slowly integrating the bigger brands within, you know, this one huge brand. You can do that. Then it's also site architecture where, you know, the number of pages that a Marriott hotel has on Marriott.com differs from the number of pages that are on StarwoodHotels.com. Even their kind of how they recognize each hotel. Marriott has a Marcia system. Starwood has a number system for their hotels, like where, you know, the W Dallas is like 0 something something, whereas downtown Dallas is DFW DT and the Marshes. So even having those name changes, if they're going to try and do similar sites within their booking engines, it's going to be pretty interesting to see who wins and how that really kind of gets sorted out.
Yeah.
Yeah, once they get all their ducks in a row, just think about all that data they have. We've on this live, we've talked just about lookalike audiences on Facebook and all the new targeting you can do between AdWords and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I mean, the email database that they all have now with their combined forces. We're going to see some in the future kind of amazing
I wrote
ads.
a piece for Hotel News Now a few weeks back now on the Tech Impact Report, where one of the things I've been telling people is, everybody questions, do hotel companies need to be tech companies? And what I've been telling people is you don't need to be a tech company, but you do need to be a data company. And you need to have the right technology that supports that data. But you can buy that in the marketplace. You can get that in the marketplace. But your point is exactly right. They're going to have more customer data, or the potential for more customer data, than any other hotel company. They're going to be able to compete pretty effectively with the OTAs with regard to that as well, at least if they use it correctly and invest correctly in things like appropriate attribution modeling, appropriate understanding of customer lifecycle journey, things along those lines that can be really, really powerful. And frankly, given what I've seen of Marriott over the years, I wouldn't put it past them that they will succeed at that. I don't think it's something we're going to see them succeed at in 3 months' time or 6 months' time or 9 months' time. It's going to take a year or two from closing the deal to really make that happen. But when they do, I think they are setting themselves up for some real long-term success.
And I think some success they could also be having is, I know Marriott's really kind of trying to build up its content division within the company. And think about it this way, when you add more brands, I think one thing they might not be using as well is there are so many different concierge, front desk people that have so much knowledge of the city. And you think about if there's something they can harness all that and put that into content they're creating, you can really have some great featured content. Really kind of focus on the sites for landing pages where you're talking about Dallas. There's so much of Dallas that you can talk about. I mean, the Starwood and Marriott brands could really, make an engagement reason for people to kind of, come to their website, to kind of know what you want to do there, and then book within it. And then also with all the data we're talking about, I know one thing that we've been trying to do with some of our clients is the retargeting, where if we don't have availability at this hotel or you're searching for that, and there's anything in app, then try and treat them like, hey, we know you didn't make it here. Why don't you also try and stay at this other brand that's very similar to us or a similar experience? So that amount of data they're going to have is going to be very interesting for them. It can really provide a lot of insights and new things for them to really kind of change what they're actually doing currently in digital marketing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we're just about at time, so real quick, Bart, what's your main takeaway from the Marriott merger?
It's going to be quite interesting. With most mergers, and I especially think more so with hotels, it's not going to happen as quickly, especially when you have licensing or franchise agreements with brands that are kind of set for a certain time. So it's going to be a slow change, but I do feel that they really are going to want to try and to be more of that technology content company that really can really gear things for user experience with 30 different brands. That's going to be really interesting in how that plays out.
Great. And Tim, your final
So I've got
thoughts on the
two,
merger?
and it really depends, for independent hoteliers, they obviously need to start thinking about this in different ways. They're playing a different game than the chains are, and really need to use what's happening in the marketplace as an opportunity to differentiate themselves. On the chain side, I think this is not necessarily the first of the dominoes to fall, but one of the next we will see. I think we're going to see a lot more consolidation. I think that, a number of hotel companies are going to start to realize they need to do exactly what Bart's talking about. They need to have the data. They need to have the content. They need to have the right distribution of product within the various markets that matter to guests. And we're going to see a lot more. And they need to have more bargaining power with the OTAs and with Google and with MetaSearch and the like. That I think that we're going to be having this conversation again pretty soon about at least somebody else in the industry, if not a couple somebody else's.
I think it's, there's always, so when you see one of the big players do something, there are a lot of other brands that need to join or get bigger so they can compete with the kind of knowledge that these others are going to have.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you both for joining us. For you loyal followers of Lauren, he will be back next week, so tune back into Blab, same time, same channel. It is the Wednesday before a holiday, so while we might not be talking about the next big merger in hospitality, there's always something new, whether it's with social media, search, paid media, or something we've never even heard of in the wild world of marketing. So thank you, everyone. Bye.